Hello everybody and welcome back to the Context Studios Band Book Club where we read like freedom depends on it. I am so excited that you guys are here for another episode of our In Conversation series where we talk with experts that can shed a little bit more light about the books that we're reading and why it's critical that these books stay in schools and the conversations. For this month we have read All Boys Aren't Blue, a memoir manifesto about growing up black and queer by George M. Johnson. This has been one of my favorite reads so far. I say that every month. I say that with everything I do because I get so excited about it. But definitely this story has been, I think, one of the most significant, not only in terms of the reach that it's had with the Context Studio. I think that there's so many new people that are following along now, so thank you for being here and welcome. But I think also in developing what my perspective is on the topic, I have by far learned the most, I guess, new information in researching this topic and kind of building the ecosystem around it. And I'm so excited to continue doing that with this conversation. So there's a lot of backstory with how this interview happened, the lengths that both of us had to do to make this interview happen, and I could not be more grateful that it ended up happening. So without further ado, I would love to introduce Ignacio Labayen de Inza. He is the CEO of the NGO and actually global charity Controlling Chemsex, which does incredible frontline work supporting those who are struggling with many different aspects of chemsex. They provide holistic and lived experience services, and if you don't know what chemsex is, that's okay. You have come to the right place. We are going to dive right into this conversation and talk about why belonging, understanding, and empathy are so important in, creating a society that is open, mindful, diverse, and fair and fun to be in. So Ignacio, welcome to the Context Studios Band Book Club podcast. I'm so excited that you're here. Would you start by introducing yourself to our listeners?
Gina, before anything, thank you for inviting me. I feel very honored, and I think we need to talk about these things. And when I see people like you who really want to understand, it's so important. So my name is Ignacio. I'm from Madrid. I'm a gay man living in London since 2008. Before that, I had problems with drugs before coming to London. It was recreational drug use. I moved to London to learn how to help people, gay people who were struggling with drugs recreationally, because that was what was happening before. And then in 2012, I got trapped by this phenomenon, which is called chemsex. For 3 years, I was really struggling myself. And since then, in 2015, 2016, I stopped all that, and I dedicate my life to support people who are struggling with chemsex. So since 2020, I'm the CEO of a charity called Controlling Chemsex, and we are supporting people affected directly or indirectly by this situation, doing the best we can to help as much as we can.
And you guys, I know you said you are in, well, actually, first let me go back and say congratulations since 2015 on being separated and also not only kind of removing yourself from something that was harming you, but also taking steps to help other people. And I know you mentioned you're based in London. Do you only work within the UK or do you guys work globally at Controlling Chemsex?
Well, everything that we offer is for free, and everything that we offer is online, which means that we are available for anyone who has a smartphone and has connection to the internet. We don't discriminate. We don't support only people in London. We don't support only men who have sex with men. We support trans. We support any person. And yeah, we are supporting people from all over the world, and many of the people in the team, they are not based in the UK. We have four or five people in Australia. We have four, five in the States, someone in Mexico, in Peru, in three people in Spain. We have someone in Italy, in Germany. So yeah, I guess we are, of course, we are global. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, that I mean, that is so, well, one, that's so incredible that you guys are able to have that reach and also that you are able to provide those services for free because having worked in NGO sectors, I definitely know how hard it can be able to provide those types of services for free. So well done for that. And I think
Thank
it's really
you.
interesting as well, the global aspect, because I had first heard of the phenomenon of chemsex when I came to the UK and I started working in the sector that I work in, which is the anti-trafficking sector. For the listeners that may not know what chemsex is, would you explain what that is? Maybe a little bit of history about it as well?
There are many definitions of what chemsex is. I I could say that chemsex is the term used to describe sexual activity that happens while under the influence of drugs that have been taken before or during this activity with the purpose of sustaining, enhancing, disinhibiting, or facilitating the experience. I can have sober sex, I can have chemsex, I can use drugs and I can end up doing having sex, for example. Maybe I go to a club with my friends, we have MDMA, we have cocaine, and I meet someone in a club and we end up having sex. That is not chemsex. Chemsex is when I call my dealer because I'm planning to have sex, because I want to enhance the experience or because I want to give myself to it boost my confidence. So I call my dealer to buy some drugs with the purpose of using drugs. Um, this has happened since the beginning of history because you remember the Romans, for example, when they had their orgies and they were crazy and they were drinking and then they were eating everything and they had sex. That is technically chemsex. But now the difference is that people are taking very, very powerful and very destructive drugs that go beyond what was used before, you know. So we are now, for example, people are using methamphetamine. Methamphetamine is a drug that can keep people awake for days. My record, I think, was maybe 3, 4 days without sleeping, prioritizing sex over everything else, which means that if I don't sleep in 3 days, I'm going to start missing days at work. I'm going to start to experience mental health problems, psychosis, paranoia, hallucinations, whatever. I'm going to neglect my friends. I'm not going to be eating. I'm not going to be drinking. So for people who are using these drugs, is their lives they fall apart. So before there was chemsex, I could take, let's say that I was going to meet someone for sex, and maybe I had a couple of beers before because they helped me to feel more confident, but that didn't have the impact that it has today, which is taking these drugs again to and then I'm not going to be eating, I'm not going to be drinking, I'm just going to be boom.
Right.
So this is where we are at the moment.
And when do you think that the phenomenon became something that the public had an awareness about? Do you think it has been something that the public had acknowledgement about but didn't really want to admit was happening? Or do you think that there's been a shift in culture that has allowed space for this conversation to start to happen?
Well, if we are having this conversation, is because there were some things that changed.
Mhm.
I would say that maybe all this started in the beginning of the century, the 2000. You could find something before that, but there were some elements that if these elements they didn't come together, we wouldn't be talking about chemsex today. For example, how available sex is. Before, if you wanted to have sex, you needed to go to a bar, you need to go to a sauna, you needed to go somewhere. Now you can be with your phone in the sofa at home trying to hook up, and then you're going to meet people without, and it's very, very, very available.
Mhm.
Sex is available. These drugs are incredibly. powerful. Again, if these drugs weren't in the market, we wouldn't be talking about chemsex. We would be just saying that there are people who are using cocaine in a sexual context, but there are also people who use cocaine in many different, socially, professionally,
Mm-hmm.
So we have um, what make chemsex what chemsex is today is these drugs, the availability of sex, and also that is affecting part of the population with who are incredibly mm, sex hypersexualized sometimes.
Right.
We have used sex for everything, to communicate, to meet people, to to manage loneliness, to feel validated.
Mm-hmm.
This part of the community is very, very common to find huge problems with self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
These drugs help people to feel confident, to feel sexier. And also, there are lots of people who they really need to be able to allow themselves to use these drugs to have sex. I give you an example, and we see this. I like being a bottom when I have sex, but I don't relax enough. And if I take something, I will be able to relax. It's helping me to have the kind of sex I like. Or maybe I am someone who I'm very self-conscious because my body is this way or is that way, or I don't have hair, or my penis is this way. And for me, using these drugs is going to be very useful because it's going to make me feel sexy.
Mm-hmm.
I think that in my real life, I don't feel like that. So this is having more an impact, more and more, is impacting the society more and more. If we would have if we had had this conversation maybe 10 years ago, I would have said that it's a gay thing. It's not a gay thing. The majority of the people who are doing chems are men who have sex with men, gay people, but now we can see the one who is straight, who likes to have sex with trans women.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gay, I don't have sex with men, but I have chemsex. We can see women who are introduced to chemsex, straight women who are introduced to chemsex by their bisexual partners, for example, who are having chemsex with male partners, and so it's expanding. There are other things that are very concerning. For example, injecting drugs is becoming more and more popular. Years ago, I would have said to you, is nothing. Is a very, very small percentage. Unfortunately, today we cannot say that. Geographically has expanded a lot. When I started working in this area, I was maybe in London, in New York, maybe a little bit in LA, in Sydney, but in just 4 or 5 places in the world. I remember working with people who they had to stop this craziness, so they moved to their hometowns, which maybe was Edinburgh,
Mm-hmm.
and they went to Edinburgh and then they forget about that. Now it's not like that. Now you can find chemsex everywhere. You can find chemsex not just everywhere in the UK, in America it's crazy, but not only in America, UK and Australia. Um, we support people in Iran, and you see, but how can in Iran they hang you if you use drugs, and if you they hang you if you have gay sex? There is chemsex. There is no chemsex support, but there is chemsex
Mm-hmm.
in Iran, in Afghanistan, in Dubai, in Vietnam, in Kenya, and lots of places that years ago they wouldn't even imagine. So nowadays, chemsex is everywhere. If you want to find chemsex, you only have to go on the app, on Grindr, for example, and it doesn't really matter where you go. If you want to find it, of course, it's going to be easier if you are in London and you check. But even if you are, like we have been seeing, someone who lives 30 kilometers from Bucharest, Romania, in a small town, or someone who is very used to driving, who lives in a small city in Germany, But because I'm always with my car, for me, it's not a problem to drive 50 kilometers because I do that every day. So these are little things that are explain a little bit why things are getting worse and why this is not really a joke, you know?
No, no, it sounds like, I mean, it sounds like a public health crisis, to be honest, a global one at that. And I think, you've touched on a lot of things there, but I wanted to go back to one of the aspects specifically, which is the availability of sex and with things like dating apps and social media. So could you talk a little bit about how dating apps and social media have changed these LGBTQ spaces or the spaces that involve things like these drugs? How do these drugs get on these apps? Are people going on these apps just to sell drugs? Would you, yeah, expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, these apps, there are many different kind of drugs. There is Recon is for people who are into fetish. There is Grinder. Grinder is the big one. There is another one. It's called BBRTs for people who are into girl, but Grinder is the big one globally. Grinder is a platform. Um, someone, well, I guess that your people who can hear this, they will know. I don't need to explain what Grinder
Yeah,
is, no?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, Grindr is the main place used for people who are into chems to contact one another. Okay, if you go on Grindr at 2 in the morning on Wednesday, it's going to be very likely that you are going to find a big number of people who are using chems. Why? Because people who work weekdays, normally they are sleeping. But people who are into chems, maybe they have to go to sleep the next day, but because they have been taking Tina, meth,
Mm-hmm.
they are not sleeping. So it's very, very easy to find it. People have lots of creativity. So when you want to find someone with chems, you can use specific icons in the app for your profile. You can put maybe a syringe
Mm-hmm.
with the needle, or you can put maybe a pill, or maybe you can use ways, for example, in the UK, it's very popular to put H and H, which is coming from high and horny. If I go on Grindr and I want to use chems, I try to check who is saying who is
H&H.
in the H and H. In America, for example, is PMP, party and play, but it's very very easy to find it. Grindr doesn't really do very much to finish with this situation because they are businessmen at the end of the day, and I'm not going to say 100% because I want to have to be cautious with this.
Yeah.
But there, they know that people who are using chems, they are more likely to pay for the membership.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because when you are high, you don't think of consequences. You are just horny, and then you take your car and you put this, and who cares? While if you are not high, maybe you see the prices and you say, "Oof, this is too much," or "I don't want to pay this," or you know. So, Grinder is aware that this is happening, but Grinder is blocking any initiative that involves chemsex support for people who want to stop or reduce their drug use. They are protecting themselves, offering harm reduction information, which is if you are going to use needles, if you're going to inject, don't share needles. Try to use a fresh one. If you are going to use GHB, how to use it safely. So they are not really stopping or helping people to stop or reduce. They are, you know. So lots of people they go on Grindr not necessarily because they want to have sex or even they want to take drugs. It's many times used because I feel bored, because I have nothing else to do, or because I feel horny, or because I feel lonely. So it's very, very useful. It's
Mm-hmm.
very useful for people who have to manage very, very uncomfortable emotions. If they say that you don't have any plan for this weekend,
Mm-hmm.
okay, when you wake up in the morning, you go on Grindr. Okay, well, I'm going to see who I could meet because I don't have any plan. Loneliness, isolation, they play a huge role here.
Mm-hmm.
So the app I cannot say, of course, not everyone who is on Grindr is looking for chems, but this is the main way people used to have chemsex, and the platform itself, they are not very supportive with, yeah. I
Yeah.
don't know if all this is making sense.
No, no, I'm appreciating all of this context because I think a lot of the public conversation tends to think of it's just risky behavior and they reduce it just to risk, sex, maybe that adrenaline aspect. And while I can imagine there are elements of that, of course, in using drugs or recreationally to any extent, I think that what you're saying and also the work and of controlling
Mm.
chemsex and other documentaries show that it's so much more complicated than that. What is the biggest misconception that you think people see when it comes to chemsex? And do you think people misunderstand the level of vulnerability? You talked about isolation, loneliness, and shame as drivers into this. Do you think people understand that as a true element of it?
There is a huge stigma from everyone because um, even within the community, the I say the gay community, you understand, we talked before that it can be bigger than that, but it's the big majority.
Mhm.
There is lots of stigma here. People who have never used drugs, they think that those who are using, they are irresponsible, perverted people who only care about sex and drugs, and you have to be careful because they are just junkies. Chemsex is every person is different. I believe that for many people, chemsex is a trap. Everything starts as a joke. You don't start straight away to inject. Maybe since you start from the first, you try for the first time until you inject, maybe 5 years. But it's very, very easy to be judgmental here. Not everyone who is using chems is doing this because of I feel horny, I want to have very, very crazy sex. Sometimes it's about escapism, and there are also people with trauma, lots of wounds. There is people who are using this because they feel they cannot have any intimacy or even sex without drugs involved anymore. Because when you get used to having only chem sex, it's not unusual that then you will end up in a situation where you cannot have sober sex anymore. Some people they use this to feel better about themselves, to get more validation. And sometimes it's about boredom. So let's say, for example, I don't have any plan this weekend because I feel isolated because I was using drugs and I push all my friends away. They don't want to hear from me because I let them down. I'm not reliable. They know I lie to them. So I am with lots of pressure in my life. And I come back home and it's Friday. I have nothing to do. I feel miserable. I am completely, and then I go on Grindr. Maybe I don't go on Grindr with the intention of getting crazy because of drugs. Maybe I'm going on Grindr just to see if I find someone nice.
Hmm.
And things escalate. Sometimes if I'm that one and I don't know how to have sober sex, and someone is around the corner and is inviting me and the guy looks nice, and I think, well, am I going to be the whole weekend here feeling miserable? No way, you know. So there are lots of misunderstandings, even in the people who are using chems, there are like levels. For example, some people could say, yes, I do chems, but I don't do Tina. Tina is the bad one. Those who use Tina, they are people who are using Tina could be thinking, okay, fine, I use Tina, but I don't inject. People who inject are the bad one. People who inject, they could be thinking, okay, fine, I inject, but I inject sometimes. There are people who are using daily. Those are the bad ones. So
Hmm.
there is always someone that we can feel a little bit better, thinking that we are not as bad as, And this is the reality of chemsex. This is what some people's lives are about nowadays while we are talking here.
And do you feel like I mean, the idea that if somebody begins to engage in this lifestyle, or if they start to kind of feel ashamed, or they, like you said, they can't have sex without being on chems or things like that, I could see how then maybe they start to surround themselves or want to surround themselves more and more around people that share those values. Because as you said, you think, okay, well, I'm at least not doing that, so I'm not those people. But slowly you are starting to become more and more dependent on it, as you said. So it seems almost like a cyclical process where you're just continuing to go downward until there's some type of intervention, whether that comes from you and or an outside involvement.
Hmm. Well, there is something important, and it's also important not to if someone here, not everyone, if someone here is hearing this. And it's someone who has a brother who is gay, for example, and you know that your friend is just your brother or your friend, whoever is using drugs, it's very important not to presume that that person is having chemsex. Some people use drugs for recreation. Also, some people are doing chems, but they are not in a very, very messy and chaotic place. I could be one of those. I tried now for the first time. I like it. I don't do anything for 3 months. I try again. It's nice. I try 2 months later, and then I found a boyfriend, and I don't use ever again. So it's very important not to think if people are using this, they are all of them. They are homeless and they are junkies. It doesn't work like this, but it's true, as you say, that sometimes things escalate. Okay, in my case. I remember very well the first day, the first time I tried, it took me a while to take drugs again. And then you start crossing boundaries. You think, okay, I would never do this. I would never do this. I'm doing methadone, I'm doing this, but I would never do this. But then you one day you meet someone who you really like, and it's very nice, and he said, come on, take a little bit of tea, and because you're already high on something else, you say, oh, okay, let's try. And then I try to say, "Ooh, look at this, it was up. And then next time I
Mhm.
start to normalize things. I start to be in environments because maybe I stop seeing my sober friends
Mhm.
because every time that I see them, they tell me off and they say, what are you doing? You look horrible and you are always letting me down. So I get to the point, say, I'm not going to let my friends down. I'm just going to start to interact only with people who they also use chems.
Mhm.
And normally, it's not about I'm going to interact with people who always use chems and then I make a group of friends. Normally, it's always with strangers. So
Mhm.
it's I don't. So maybe I can start to develop friendship, but they don't last for very long normally. Or maybe I meet you in this chemsex context. We get along very well, but next time we go to another place together, and then you are an asshole because you are due to something that upset me.
Mhm.
So relationships can be they can become very, very shallow, very superficial because of that, no?
Oh, definitely.
And and it's very normal, as we were saying, is that you start to cross boundaries and you just go deeper and deeper and deeper, and some people they go to a very, very dark place.
Oh, yes, yes, I can definitely see that. And I think touching on something you said at the beginning and thinking about the assumptions that people make, because maybe you've used it one time, it means that you are deeply involved in this lifestyle, when, as you said, there's different layers to it. What role do you think assumptions as well as stigma plays in preventing people from getting help?
A big problem that people find is that, for example, if I start to experience problems with these things, I would find very difficult to go to a generic drug and alcohol service because I will be thinking that they don't and they are not going to understand me. Also, that is for heroin users who are or crack cocaine users who are really, really in a very bad place. I'm using this every 2 weeks. I'm keeping my job and can function more or less. So I will find very difficult to go to certain places. Also, something that stops people is that they are very scared sometimes to go to places where they are going to have very, very deep assessments and they are going to ask you for 20,000 questions. How many times we receive messages from people saying, Are you going to, please tell me, if I tell you about my situation, who is going to have access to, are you going to contact my GP? Are you going? So for lots of people, this idea that confidentiality maybe could be broken is a big obstacle, you know?
Mm-hmm.
The other obstacles that people are finding is that sometimes they don't know where to go. This is a very important thing because it's like, and sometimes people think that this is happening in America, in your country. It's happening a lot. There is no service like controlling chemsex in your country at all. So in your country, people go to organizations and they normally give them harm reduction support. Harm reduction is you're going to inject, I give you
Clean
uh,
needle, a clean space.
for example, the problem in the States, years ago we were doing a project and I contacted around 30 organizations in the States. I was asking them, LGBT organization, drug and alcohol services, and I was asking them, where would you send people who are struggling with this? And they say, we send them to NAE or to Crystal Meth Anonymous. 12 steps. And I asked them, fantastic, these programs normally are straight. What happens if I go to CMA and there are lots of straight people there and I need to talk about my sex life because in chemsex, sex is a very important thing. Or what happens if chemsex, sorry, CMA, for example, they are always talking about abstinence, but not everyone the first time they ask for support is about abstinence. Sometimes people we want to keep some control here. All these there are many many barriers for people who are asking for help. In America, for example, those of people they think that the solution is going to rehab. Some of them they have insurance and insurance cover this, but the problem is that they go to places that they don't really understand chemsex, and as soon as they leave the program, they go and use. So it's a big problem for them. That is why we at Controlling Chemsex, we have to try to make everything as easy as possible for people who are going to be finding everything very, very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
That is why when someone is contacting us, we don't ask for 20,000 questions. Everything that we offer is so confidential that you don't even need to give me your name if you don't want to. So you could tell me, my name is Peter, and I said, fantastic. And maybe your email address is I like the USA at gmail.com. And for me, that is enough because we will be able to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
So this is making things more difficult, which is accessibility for support.
And what role do you think lived experience leadership and mentorship in these spaces can play in people's success? I've heard in so many cases how putting, and I've seen as well in my work, how lived experience can really, it shows just an example of somebody who's been in this position, getting out of it. And it's a lot easier, I think, for people to, put themselves in someone else's shoes when they know that they've walked it and they can see the other side. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I agree with you. Life experience is important because there are things that you are not going to be able to learn in a book. I can give you an example. When I started to work in this field, helping people with drug issues, we started to see people who were struggling with chemsex. There was no information. We had to learn from zero. And I remember thinking that my personal experience with drugs recreationally was going to be enough for me to understand. When I got involved in chemsex and when I started to see the reality, I realized that what I had experienced before with my drug use had nothing to do with chemsex. A big part of the team, of the members of our team, they are people who struggled with chems in the past themselves. And I think when we recruit people, this is a really important element. If someone is someone who got over chemsex, that is something that with how many people they come and they say, but can I really, really get over this? And I can tell them, yes, you can. I'm the living proof. I was there and I am now living a completely different life. And sometimes they need to hear that. We have a group of people, we have one group at the moment for people who have finished our one-to-one. They are maybe 15 people. They are supporting each other, and the thing that are making them feel safer is knowing that everyone understands. You don't need to pretend. You can be completely honest because you think if all of us at the end of the day we have been there. Mm.
Well, and it sounds like, I mean, honestly, as a driver on both sides of it, whether you're engaging in chemsex in the community that's around that or engaging in a community that's centered on recovery from it, it sounds like the idea of belonging is a huge driver. You know, you were saying before how people may start to engage in that because of feelings like isolation and loneliness. And I think that ultimately becomes a driver for people to get help as well for this problem. And I think,
Mm.
like you were saying, that group of 15 people that are able to support each other. Just that mentorship, I'm sure, is so incredible, and it's amazing to hear about that work. And that's, I
Yeah.
think, a big part of why I wanted to have this conversation tied to All Boys Aren't Blue is because so much about that story by George M. Johnson centers on the idea of belonging, identity, figuring out who you are, and those themes as well seem so central to the conversations around chemsex.
Well, there is a reality, and I think community, identity, belonging is what so many people are ultimately looking for. Sometimes you're trying to find all that by using drugs because maybe sometimes how many times we work with people who say, I don't have any gay friends. I don't have any gay friends, and I is my only way to be in touch with the community, which is also a big obstacle for lots of people to stop, which is if I stop, I'm going to feel lonely. We are in a community, and it's a very sad reality. Last week it was the gay pride, the London Pride. We went and we marched, and people were stopping us, and they were, and I could see lots of people with signs about love and about all that. And I was thinking, this is not what these people are experiencing normally. I mean, in this community, if you are sexy and you're young and you're this, you are going to have lots of chances that you are going to be accepted. If you are old, if you are fat, if you are ugly, this is going to be more difficult. And for us, it's very painful because we strongly believe that the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, is connection. So the work that we are doing is always about trying to connect people to everything, connecting to other people, connecting to your emotions, connecting to your values, connecting to the world, connecting to joy without drugs involved, connected to intimacy. And I know I did some research about this book. Unfortunately, for example, the Black community is incredibly vulnerable to chemsex because lots of people they hypersexualize them. So, if you are Black, um, I have heard this so many times from Black people. I say, you know what? I'm so sick that they see you as a piece of meat. They don't go beyond that. It's like, oh my God, you're with a Black guy. And this is for them is incredibly difficult because they sometimes they don't see this as a plus. Okay, I'm Black, I'm going to be more wanted. Is I'm Black, I'm to feel more used.
Mhm.
So we fight really hard precisely to help people to heal sometimes the relationship that they have with the community because sometimes people have been very hurt. Sometimes people they feel completely outsiders. They don't know how to connect with people in the community unless there is sex involved. That is why sometimes we have to help people to do other things apart. When we start to explore resources that there are so many things available. There are gay tennis club, and you can go and do something related to photography, acting, singing, but you can dance tango and salsa. You can be people, they go so shocked because they didn't even know. I said, I know, I thought that my only way to connect was Grindr.
And there's a whole
And
world out there.
exactly, but many people they don't know.
hmm I love what you said about the opposite of addiction is connection, because I think that is one of the best kind of healing mentalities and healing elements for the world if we can come together and support each other. And I think it also speaks to the layered nature and complexity of something like addiction. It's not just, okay, you go to rehab, you sit there, and then you come out and you're fine. If you're exactly in that same environment, you don't have the
Oh,
coping skills and tools. It's so easy to fall back into that. I mean, I can think of myself just even in a small example. If I decide, okay, one week I want to spend less time on Instagram and I just I don't delete the app from my phone or something like that, I'm just having that temptation right there. And if I just will say, okay, I won't, I'll be on it before I even realize it because it's just such a habit.
exactly. And you were born with this technology. You're very
Yes.
young. So for you, this is so normal. But for you and for so many people, I see the children of my friends, they are crazy with TikTok, Instagram, and they move this generation.
hmm
I can understand you with because for you so normalized and this Instagram thing, bless you. I really hope that you
Yeah.
can deal with that effectively.
Yes, yes, no, and I think it's such a, I think, and this is one of the beautiful things about the online world, but also one of the greatest risks is it allows us to be so interconnected. You know, you can go on like meetup.com or community event websites, Eventbrite, and find things like gay tennis clubs, like you mentioned, but then also there's that dark side of it where you can almost access anything you want at any time. And if you are in a
Mm.
vulnerable place, and I think I really appreciated what you brought up about how Black queer people face even more vulnerabilities with that, because that was going to be my next question. How, you know, there's multiple vulnerabilities and marginalization factors that can prevent people from being helped.
Well, and just 1 second, sorry for interrupting. This is also happening with Asian people.
Really?
Asian people, yeah, woof, sometimes you go on Grindr and you see not into camp and Asian. Some Asian people, they are desperate and they are not accepted. So they are also incredibly vulnerable. It's unfortunate, but there are also white people who they don't like other white people. They only like white, black. So it's or people who are into old people, into young people, older people. For them is lots of discrimination,
hmm
and it's race, it's age, it's body type, it's incredibly sad.
I have no doubt. And I want to bring up something that George themselves actually mentioned in the book. So they spoke about one of their cousins who was diagnosed with HIV and how Black queer individuals, I think, were 50% more likely to have HIV from different experiences. And I just was wondering if you would talk a little bit about HIV and the way that STIs can, you know, further hurt this community and the risks that are coming from this.
Well, there is we cannot deny sex is so available
Mhm.
that maybe if I'm going to be 2 or 3 days prioritizing sex and feeling overconfident and feeling that everything is going to be all right. And I can be having sex with lots of people who are going to be having sex with lots of people at the same time. STIs are incredibly, on the
Prevalent.
table. The thing is that sexual health clinics they could play a very important role here because lots of people who are using chems, they will end up catching something. So you will have to go, even if you feel horrible, you will have to go to the sexual health clinic for treatment for gonorrhea or for something like that. It's important to understand that sexual health is going to be very poor in people who are using chems, including HIV. HIV years ago, of course, in the 80s and 90s, people were dying because of that. They were, thanks God, medication and treatment, they were start to develop. There was something called PEP. PEP is post-exposure treatment. If you have exposed yourself to catching HIV, you could go in 72 hours. You could go to a sexual health clinic and they give you treatment to prevent the infection. Okay, that has been working it has been in the market for a long time. So lots of people started to feel more confident thinking, okay, yes, but if I am at risk, there is also something that is going to help me to prevent that. Years later, we have what is called PrEP. PrEP is if you take medication, you can block your system to get HIV. So lots of people now, they are not worried about HIV at all because they think, well, I can take this, I can take PrEP, so I can have all the sex I want and I won't catch HIV. What is the problem with that? That is preventing you from catching HIV, but you can get everything else. You can get gonorrhea, you can get chlamydia, you can get syphilis, you can get Hep C. But some people think, well, all of them, I can take antibiotics, I can take something, I can heal that. But with HIV, not, and I can protect myself. What is the conclusion to that? Now people are taking lots of risks, lots of risks that before they wouldn't have. Before when there was no PrEP, people were more conscious about that. There were lots of infections, but people were very, very worried. And now, if you go to places and you don't even ask, are you HIV positive or not? You just say, well, I'm protected, I'm taking my PrEP, and I'm safe. But this is something important to understand, and is chemsex. I always think like this: chemsex wants to take everything away from people's life, sexual health, relationships, careers, self-esteem, your physical health, wants to take your money, your finances, wants to take it, and sexual health is one of the first things. If you are using chems regularly, for example, I can tell you that I have got all the STIs in the world. Well, all of them, you know what I mean, no? And you normalize that. Okay, I got gonorrhea again. Oh, okay, fine. I need to go again for the pills,
Mm-hmm.
but people are not concerned anymore about that, you
And
know.
do you feel like people know that they can well, I mean, you mentioned that you feel like people know that they can access this medication, but do you think that people are truly taking it kind of as they should be, or accessing it when they need to be, or do you think that there are still gaps there?
Well, it's important to understand that I'm talking about London,
Mm-hmm.
UK, but it depends. There are states in America where you don't have treatment for HIV.
Okay.
You don't have, I remember years ago, someone told me that his friend who lived in Washington State, in Seattle, had died because he got HIV. He didn't have insurance and he was homeless. He couldn't get medication for HIV. And this is in Europe, that is covered, but it's not covered by everyone. The PrEP is developing. Before you have to take a pill every day. Now there are different ways to take it. But I think all these kind of things that are making chemsex less scary,
Mm-hmm.
what they're doing is to make using much easier. Because, and I know this is controversial, but for me it's very interesting to hear that now we are more free than ever. You can have sex with whoever you want. You can be whoever you want, your gender, you can have a polyamorous relationship if you want. You can be with a man, you can be with a woman, you can be with a trans, you can be whatever you like. And people think that we have never been as free as now. And I think that is the opposite. We have never been as slaves as now, because freedom is about being able to say no to something that you want to say no, but you can't. And how many people, they do things and say, oh my God, I didn't want to do this. Again, I'm doing that. Again, I have to be, or I don't want to use chems now because it's the third time I miss days at work and my boss has told me next time you fire, and I couldn't control myself. And this is for me, this is also very, very sad because it's not necessarily about drugs. It's everything, for example, about sex now, because you can have all the sex you want. You can sometimes just being with one person only is not enough. So lots of people, they end up over in relationship. And I was the first one doing this. So it's not about judging.
Mhm.
But because you get to the point that I need more, then is when you need pornography to be able to have fantasies. Without pornography, maybe you don't know how to have sex or drugs. So it's a really complicated situation, and I don't want to look pessimistic, but it's not good for the mental health of lots of people. So people, they are really, really struggling with these things,
Mhm.
and we do the best we can. But yeah,
Do you think that we focus too much on individual behavior while overlooking the wider social conditions that create vulnerability to things like chemsex?
well, I think we have to look at both, because people are free to. They could be people hearing this video thinking that I'm stigmatizing and I'm talking about this, when it's very good for some people to explore fantasies. Why I'm saying this? Because, of course, everyone has the right to do whatever they like. We are not here to tell people don't do anything. We are here if you think you need help. Okay? So I'm not here patronizing anyone, because, first of all, who am I? So this is affecting individuals who maybe they end up in this place for many reasons, that they are coming out. For example, people who have been bullied in the school, people who found very difficult to come out, people who they think that unless they use drugs, they won't be liked by anyone because they have such a low self-esteem. And there is a big problem in the community in general. This is what I was telling you before. We go to the pride, and everything is about love, and everything is about that. And I always think everything is about love. Depends, because if your friend tomorrow is doing something, how many times we see someone who is sleeping with the boyfriend of someone else, because everything is there for you. And unfortunately, and I feel very, very sad saying this, the community is really, really hurt. Is aching. There are lots of people who are full of traumas. We don't support them. We support them sometimes, but again, if you are ugly, forget it. No one is going to be worried about you. And I don't want to look very pessimistic, but this is a reality in the community. I'm not going to say negative, but I have to say what we see every day. I'm seeing maybe 12, 15, 14 people a week who are coming with all the traumas, with you wouldn't believe the things that we hear. And there is so much, isolation, people who want to connect, people who end up saying, you know what, I don't want to hear anything from the gay community ever again.
Mhm.
People are mean, people are,
Oh, definitely, definitely. And I mean, I think, yeah, I could agree with you more on all of those aspects. I wanted to ask you as well. We've talked a lot about the importance of these conversations. And as you know, the book by George M. Johnson is one of the most challenged books in schools in the US. From 2021 to 2024, it was within the top 5 most banned and challenged books, according to the American Library Association. What do you think is the importance of keeping books like this in schools? And what do you think the harm is in removing them from the shelves?
well, I have to admit that I haven't read the book. I did a little research to try to understand who is the writer.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's important that these things are, because not everyone is white and not everyone is a man, and not every, so I working with someone who is black, for example. I try to understand, and I cannot pretend I understand, because I'm a gay man as well. I mean, they have many things that are very. So I think it's very important. I don't know. Again, I cannot really talk about this book in particular, but I think it's important to be able to offer realistic messages, and also very positive messages. When I remember when I was younger, I was trying to find books to read about all that, and there was nothing. You have to. I was living in a limbo. I thought I was the only gay in the world, and I was for many years. I was like this. No one in my world was gay. I had no information about the gay world. the information I had was what I saw in on TV, which was always about people who were very, perverted and and I think that anything that can help people to find themselves has to be welcome.
And I think that is something that at least I know I, as well as other readers in our book club and globally, appreciated about their memoir is alongside, painting a picture of the struggles that they faced growing up, coming to their identity and some of the loneliness and shame that they associated with it. It's also a beautiful story about belonging, building your community, building that internal resilience and finding your strength, your voice, and yourself. I
Okay.
was wondering if you would mind sharing a success story that you have seen at your work or something that you've seen within your roles that inspired you. Completely anecdotally, of course.
Well, I can tell you someone who was really, it was maybe 10, 12 years ago, someone who was incredibly paranoid. Just coming to the clinic where I was, it was really, really difficult for him. He was completely isolated. He had been for years. The only people who he was seeing were people who use chems, his drug dealer and the guy in the corner shop near just around the corner just to buy some food sometimes. He was incredibly paranoid. We started to work together and it was clear that he needed to find a community. So I remember that we were exploring, okay, let's dream, what kind of people would you like to meet? He didn't know anything, so we were using some exercises, and then he remembered that when he was a child, it's a little long, this story. Maybe I should tell you a shorter one.
No, no, please. I would love to hear it.
It was someone American, by the way, living
Oh,
in London. So this guy, he didn't know what to do. He was very aware. If I don't do anything, if I don't build a community, I'm going to be using because loneliness is going to push me there.
okay.
You know. So this guy, he said to me, when we were exploring ways for him to connect, he said to me, the only things I like is, music, cinema, but I don't have anyone. I said, we need to find something else. And exploring, he remembered that when he was a child, he wanted to go to school club, sorry, a theater club in the school, and his mother said to him, no, no, you cannot go there because you have to study. So he forgot. So he said to me, I would like to start. Okay, let's dream. We found an acting course, and it wasn't a course, it was a group. So he contacted them in front of me. He contacted them and they invited him to go to help with the dresses. And there were two girls, two lesbian girls there. And there was one guy, and he went to this place. He laughed so much that since that day he laughed so much, everything changed. He started to help with this, he started to get more and more involved, and then he started to do acting, and is someone who is from your country. I supported him years ago. He's not in London anymore. He's back to your country, but from time to time he emailed me
Uh-huh.
just to tell me, for example, I just want to tell you that I have started a course of photography and I'm going to have a show in my hometown. And he sent me a picture, and I think, oh my God, and this guy was so. I could tell you lots of stories, lots of them,
Wow.
beautiful stories. We have someone in the team, for example, when he came, he was really, really struggling, and now he's running the marathon. And he sent me a picture of this is me in the New York Marathon last weekend. And
Hmm.
I always think, oh my God, I met this guy, and now he's running the marathon. Very
Wow.
great.
No, that's an amazing, amazing story. And I think like you said, I think success can really come from anywhere. And it's so amazing that your organization is able to support. Well, no, I really appreciated that story. And I think again, it speaks one to the global impact and the global reach that you guys have, but I think it also, speaks to the resilience that people can find. At the beginning of their story, you mentioned that they felt like there wasn't anything that they were going to be passionate about, and now they're running marathons. I mean, what a like a
No,
what a metaphor in itself.
it's true, and they are running marathons, and people who they are now part of the team who they were destroyed, and now they are doing amazing work supporting other people.
Yeah.
It's very sad seeing many, many. difficult stories, but sometimes you hear things that say, wow, this is worth it. What we are doing this is hard, but is very, very, very important. Yeah. Mm.
And the stories like that, besides those, what else gives you hope for the future of LGBTQ health community and the future of chemsex or eradicating chemsex in general?
Well, eradicating chemsex is, I see, is going to be very, very difficult because these platforms, hookup apps, they are developing and they are making even everything even easier. There is one platform. Now you don't even need to create a profile. It's like Google Maps. You see a map, and then people, you can see that in this building, there is this person. And then you send a message, and he said, yes, I like you, first floor. Or
Wow.
no, I don't like so now, and you can see very explicit pictures. So these things are getting more and more challenging because the drugs, there are new drugs in the market. There is monkey dust, which is incredibly, incredibly destructive, much more than tinam and than meth. So there are things that are making things very, very concerning. Not everything is negative because thanks God there are more awareness of what can sex is. So many people before could say, I didn't know what I was doing. Now lots of them they don't know what they are doing, but so there are good things and bad things. The future for the community, I would love to say that people are going to be happier than how we are now, but I don't know if I believe that. I think that unfortunately is what I was telling you. You can see, for example, yourself when you said about Instagram. I didn't have Instagram when I was your age.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was your age, I didn't spend 3 hours on Instagram. Maybe I was 3 hours on the phone with my friend.
Mm-hmm.
Also, is going to be a challenge. I really, really hope that people can put all this together. But for example, how suicides, for example, unfortunately, how vulnerable people are to that. Bullying is supposed to be better than ever before. Is not true. We hear very, very strong stories about bullying in schools when teachers they don't take any action, and also so I would love to tell you, no, everything is going to be good. And if I always, recently my nephew, he had on WhatsApp in his picture, he was hugging someone who had a wristband with the gay flag. And I spoke with my nephew and I said, are you gay? Because I said, no, no, but he's a very good friend of mine and he's gay and I really love him. He's my friend.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking, okay, I'm going to speak with my nephew. Hopefully, 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 he's going to tell me he's not gay. Not because being gay is wrong. It's because if you are gay, you're going to be more vulnerable to lots of problems that straight people won't have to address. In my world, my straight world, when I was younger, I never, never saw drugs. If I had been straight, I would have never seen drugs on my way. Never, ever. And the problem is that because I was gay, I suffered from bullying. I was really, really struggling with my self-esteem. I had to come out with my parents and they didn't take it well. My brothers, they were straight, they never had to come out. I had to deal with drugs, with addiction, with suicidal thoughts, with need of validation, having been in toxic relationship just because I wanted to feel loved.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there are lots of straight people who they are in that situation and all that. But if my nephew had been gay, the first thing I would have said was, I love you very much, but it's important. Let me tell you, drugs, let me tell you, you're going to find this, the gay scene is this way, is that way. Be careful with Grindr. Grindr is like this, but in Grindr you can find this, you can find that. And not necessarily about drugs, you know. I don't know if this you're going to think that I'm bringing a very negative message, but
No,
this what we see every day, unfortunately,
no,
you
no.
know.
Well, I think there's a difference between being realistic and negative. I think, somebody who's doing the work that you're doing, you clearly have that positive perspective because you are every day going out and believing that it can be better,
Mhm.
believing people can change, believing that people do want better for themselves. And I think but that belief is what drives that change. One of my favorite quotes of all time, and I think about it a lot, is by Angela Davis. She says, "We have to believe that radical change is possible, and we have to act like it all the time." And that doesn't mean,
Good
saying
one.
everything is perfect, but it just means you have to show up even though you know it's not. And I think that is exactly what you're doing. And, you actually answered, I feel like you're always one step ahead of me because you actually answered the next question that I was going to ask, which was if you could speak to somebody who's listening to this and related to some of the experiences, what would you say? But I think you kind of just answered that by saying the conversation that you would have had with your nephew.
Yeah, well, if I was in front of myself when I was 20,
Mm-hmm.
I'm 56 now. The first thing I would say to myself is be ready. It's not going to be difficult, but that doesn't mean that the world is rubbish. There is lots of amazing things happening in the world. I know lots of amazing people here in the charity, not in the charity, people who are doing lots to help others. Not everyone is crazy and selfish and is raping other people, dragging them. There are lots of people who they are really, really doing amazing things. And this is a very, very important thing because it's true. We cannot deny that there is bad people, but there is also amazing people there, you know.
Mhm. Where can people learn more about your work and the work at Controlling Chemsex? Where could I point them to? Where can you point them to?
Well, one of the things that we are trying to do is to raise awareness of how chemsex is affecting the community. That was the reason why I wanted to speak with you because I said, well, of course, we need to talk about this because unfortunately, there are still many people who they don't know what this is about and what is happening.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why our name is Controlling Chemsex is because we want it to be visible. If someone is in the need of support, they can find us very quickly. Why is this? Because, and this is causing lots of problems because some people, lots of people, they wouldn't donate because they don't want our name in our bank statements.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a problem because of course everything that we are doing is for free, but everything is not for free for us. We have to pay freelancers, we have to pay therapists. But the thing is that we have in our social media every time that we are posting something is always about understanding chemsex. It's always very, very practical for people who can be in the need of chemsex support or is looking for information. I think nowadays social media is a very is we cannot ignore social media. We live in this world.
Mm-hmm.
We are trying to raise awareness in any way we can. You know,
Mm-hmm.
our website is very much. If someone wants to check our website, the content of our website is not copied and pasted from other places. It's specifically about chemsex. It has been created by chemsex specialist advisors and people with personal experience with chems. And if someone wants to understand more, just have a look at that and follow us, and we will be there to help the best we can.
Of course. Well, and I will put all of your websites, Instagram handles, and links in the or on the screen right now, and then also in the bio, so people will be able to learn more. And I actually made on my Instagram as well, I had made a post talking a little bit about the work that you guys do. So I will be sure to highlight all of that. Ignacio, thank you so, so, so much for your time. This has been one of my favorite conversations, and I'm so happy that we were able to have this. And I am in awe of the work you do. I am so grateful that you wanted to come onto this platform and we could bring this conversation to life a little bit. So thank you so, so, so
Wonderful.
much. Wow, you guys, that was, here I go again. That was one of my favorite conversations that I've had. He is such a beautiful and profound speaker, and I am so, so, so happy that we were able to have this conversation. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to it just as much as I enjoyed having it. And yeah, I hope that is the reminder to everybody to be a little kinder to each other. We never know what other people are struggling with. And yeah, stories like All Boys Aren't Blue and memoirs that highlight points of lives and perspectives and conversations that are difficult should for sure remain in the conversation on the shelves, and they should not be banned. So I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I liked filming it, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. During this next episode, we are going to be reading Fahrenheit 451 for July. So it's getting hot. It makes sense to read a book about lighting things on fire. Hopefully no one's burning their books this year, but at the Context Studio on our Instagram, Substack, and obviously Spotify, YouTube, we'll be having our videos, but follow us on Instagram to learn a little bit more about the backstory and watch as we build the ecosystem around the book, travel with me on our field trips around the city, and yeah, keep reading like freedom depends on it, because it does. I'll see you next time.